Linda Hartwell is 52, married to a successful orthopedic surgeon, lives in a $2 million house in an exclusive gated community, and has never worked a day in her life. She's what you'd get if you crossed a real housewife with an HOA president and gave the result unlimited free time and zero self-awareness. I've known Linda for 8 years, and in that time, I've watched her get 3 different restaurant managers fired for incompetence. Their crime was bringing her medium well steak instead of medium rare, call the police on a landscaping crew for loitering, they were eating lunch, start a neighborhood campaign to ban food trucks because they attracted the wrong element, demand to speak to the manager at literally every business she enters, leave 1-star Yelp reviews that read like legal threats. Alex is mortified by his mom's behavior, but Dr. Hartwell enables it because it's easier than dealing with Linda's tantrums. Their house staff quits constantly. Delivery drivers refuse to come to their house. Local businesses have her picture behind the counter like a wanted poster. Linda's favorite hunting ground is the upscale outdoor shopping center near their house. She goes there almost daily to terrorize baristas, retail workers, and anyone else she considers beneath her social status. Her typical routine? Order something complicated and custom, then complain that it's wrong, even when it's exactly what she ordered, and then demand to speak to the manager to threaten bad reviews and corporate complaints, and usually get free stuff or discounts just to make her go away. She treats this like a hobby. She literally budgets time for errands, which is code for going out to ruin someone's day. The coffee shop at the local shopping center knows her by name, and not in a good way. I've been with Alex when we've stopped there, and I've watched grown adults visibly tense up when Linda walks through the door. But Linda's reign of terror was about to come to an abrupt end, and it started with her picking the wrong target on the wrong day. The day everything changed was a Tuesday in October. Alex and I had plans to meet for lunch at the shopping center, and I got there early, so I stopped at the coffee shop to wait for him. That's when I saw Linda in full Karen mode, and this time she'd found a new victim. There was a guy sitting alone at one of the corner tables, working on a laptop. He looked to be in his 40s, wearing worn jeans, an old t-shirt, and a baseball cap. He had a backpack next to his chair and looked like he'd been there for a while, with an empty coffee cup and some papers spread out. To most people, he looked like a normal guy getting some work done. To Linda, he looked like an opportunity. I watched Linda march over to his table with that predatory look she gets when she's identified a target. "Excuse me," she said, in that fake polite voice she uses before going nuclear. "I think you need to move." The guy looked up, confused. "I'm sorry?" "This is a family establishment, and frankly, your situation is making other customers uncomfortable. There are shelters and libraries where you can loiter without disturbing paying customers." I nearly choked on my drink. Linda had decided this guy was homeless and was trying to kick him out of the coffee shop. The guy looked around, clearly trying to understand what was happening. "Ma'am, I bought a coffee and I'm just working. I'm not bothering anyone." "You've been nursing that one drink for hours, taking up space that paying customers need. This isn't a homeless shelter." The coffee shop was maybe half full. There were plenty of empty tables. But Linda had decided this guy didn't belong there, and when Linda makes a decision, she commits. "I can buy another coffee if that's the issue," the guy said, still trying to be polite. "It's not about the coffee," Linda snapped, dropping the fake politeness. "It's about standards. This is an upscale establishment in a nice area, and frankly, your presence here is inappropriate." The few other customers were starting to stare. The baristas behind the counter were watching nervously, probably trying to decide whether to intervene. The guy started packing up his laptop. "Look, I don't want to cause any trouble. I'll just go." But Linda wasn't done. She never is.
And another thing, she continued, her voice getting louder, I know your type. You probably don't even have money for that coffee you're nursing. You're just in here for the free Wi-Fi and air conditioning, taking advantage of their hospitality. The guy stopped packing and looked up at Linda with an expression I couldn't quite read. Excuse me? You heard me. This is a business, not a charity. There are places for people in your situation. This isn't one of them. That's when the guy's whole demeanor changed. He sat back down and looked at Linda like he was seeing her for the first time. My situation? Don't play dumb. It's obvious you don't belong here. Your clothes, your general appearance. This is a place for families and professionals, not... She waved her hand dismissively at him. Not what? He asked, and his voice was very quiet. Linda must have mistaken his quietness for intimidation, so she doubled down. Look, I'm trying to be nice about this, but if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to call security or the police. This is harassment of paying customers. The guy nodded slowly, like he was processing this information. You want to call the police because I'm drinking coffee while dressed casually. I want to call the police because you're loitering and disturbing the peace. This is a nice area with standards, and those standards exist for a reason. That's when the guy smiled. Not a nice smile. A smile like he'd just figured something out. What's your name? He asked Linda. That's none of your business, but mine is Linda Hartwell, and my husband is Dr. Richard Hartwell. We live in Prestwick Estates, and we're very active in this community. Why Linda always announces her full name and address when she's about to make enemies is beyond me, but she does it every time. Linda Hartwell, the guy repeated, like he was memorizing it. Prestwick Estates. That's right. So you understand that I have influence here. This isn't some random complaint from some random person. When I speak to management, they listen. The guy nodded and pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Linda demanded. Calling the police, like you suggested. I think they should hear about this situation. Linda looked confused. That wasn't how this usually went.
I watched Linda's face go through several expressions as the guy made his phone call. First, confusion, then suspicion, then concern as she realized this wasn't going the way these confrontations usually went. Hi, this is David Spencer, the guy said into his phone. I'm at the coffee shop in Westfield Shopping Center, and I'm being harassed by another customer who wants me arrested for drinking coffee while dressed casually. Yes, really, no, I'm not joking. Linda was starting to look nervous. Who are you calling? David held up a finger to shush her while he continued his call. The woman's name is Linda Hartwell. She lives in Prestwick Estates, married to Dr. Richard Hartwell. Yes, I'll wait. Linda's face went pale. Something about the way this guy was handling the situation was clearly not matching her expectations. Excuse me, Linda said, her voice less certain now. Who exactly are you calling? David smiled at her. The police, like you suggested. But first I called my head of security to let him know where I am. He gets nervous when strangers threaten to have me arrested. Your head of security? Occupational hazard, I'm afraid. Linda was starting to look around like she was trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. The baristas were openly staring now, and other customers had stopped pretending not to listen. David's phone rang. Hi, Detective Morrison. No, false alarm, but could you do me a favor and run a background check on Linda Hartwell, Prestwick Estates, married to Dr. Richard Hartwell? Yes, I'll hold.
Linda was starting to panic.
Excuse me, Linda said, her voice less certain now. What kind of background check? Who are you? David looked at her like she was a mildly interesting science experiment. You know, Linda, you never actually asked who I was. You just made assumptions based on my appearance and decided I didn't belong here. Well, who are you then?
I'm David Spencer. I'm the CEO of Fusion Core Technologies. The color drained completely from her face. Even I knew who David Spencer was. His company had been in the news constantly over the past year. He was worth something like $3 billion and was famous for being unconventional and down to earth despite his wealth. That's not possible, Linda stammered. David pulled out his wallet and showed her his ID, then his black American Express card, then what looked like a business card with the Fusion Core logo. I was here doing some research. We're looking at expanding our retail technology partnerships, and I like to visit locations anonymously to see how things actually work. It's amazing what you'll learn about a place when people think you're just a regular customer. Linda looked like she was going to be sick. But today I learned something even more interesting. I learned that some customers think they have the right to decide who belongs in public spaces based on their appearance and perceived social status. David's phone rang again. Hi, detective. Interesting. How many complaints? Ah, I see. No need for that, but could you do me another favor? Linda was gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. Detective Morrison says you're quite well known to local businesses, Linda. Apparently you've generated more customer complaint reports than anyone else in the city. Several managers have had to ban you from their establishments. Those were legitimate complaints about poor service. 12 different businesses, Linda, in 2 years. The detective finds that statistically unlikely to be a coincidence. The coffee shop had gone completely quiet, except for the espresso machine. Everyone was watching this unfold like it was a live-streamed reality show. David put his phone away and looked at Linda with genuine curiosity. I have to ask, what did you think was going to happen here? Did you really think you could just walk over to a stranger and demand they leave a public business because you didn't like how they looked? Linda was opening and closing her mouth like a fish, but no words were coming out. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you committed assault. Assault? Linda's voice cracked. I never touched you. Threatening to call the police on someone who's committed no crime, attempting to have them removed from a public accommodation based on their appearance, creating a hostile environment, that's harassment at minimum, possibly assault, depending on how the prosecutor wants to handle it. Linda was looking around desperately, like she was hoping someone would help her or tell her this was all a joke.
But David wasn't done. You know what's interesting, Linda? David said, settling back in his chair like he was just getting started. I was having a perfectly quiet morning, getting some work done, and you decided to make me your project. So now you've become my project. Linda's voice came out as a whisper. What do you mean? Well, I was curious about you. So while Detective Morrison was running your background check, I had my team do some research. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Linda Marie Hartwell, age 52, married to Dr. Richard Hartwell of Hartwell Orthopedic Associates. No employment history, but very active in, complaints, reviews, and what my team is calling serial customer harassment. Linda tried to speak, but David held up his hand. We found your Yelp account. 847 reviews, 92% of them 1 star, all for the same types of complaints. Service too slow, employees too rude, managers too unaccommodating. But here's the interesting part. We cross-referenced your complaints with employment records from those businesses. David turned his phone screen toward Linda. 17 different employees at 12 different businesses have quit or been fired within 30 days of one of your complaints. That's not a coincidence, Linda. That's a pattern. Linda was shaking now. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You've systematically targeted service workers who can't fight back, cost them their jobs, and apparently made it a hobby. That's sociopathic behavior. The barista behind the counter was staring at Linda with an expression of pure hatred.
I realized she was probably one of the people Linda had terrorized. But here's what's really interesting. We also look into your husband's practice. Dr. Hartwell has had a concerning number of malpractice complaints and patient grievances over the past 2 years. Nothing that's resulted in lawsuits, but a definite pattern of patient dissatisfaction. Linda's face went white. You can't. That's private medical information. Patient complaints filed with medical boards are public record, Linda. Anyone can look them up, but most people don't have a team of researchers who can analyze patterns and correlations. David put his phone down and looked at Linda with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so cold. Would you like to know what we found? Linda shook her head, but David continued anyway. There's a strong correlation between your complaint activity and your husband's patient problems. When you're having a particularly busy month terrorizing local businesses, Dr. Hartwell gets more patient complaints about rushed appointments, poor bedside manner, and inadequate follow-up care. Linda looked confused. What does that even mean? It means when you're stressed and angry about not being able to control your environment, you take it out on your husband, and he takes it out on his patients. You're not just hurting service workers, Linda. You're hurting vulnerable people who trust your husband with their medical care. Linda started crying. Not pretty crying, ugly, desperate crying. Please, she whispered, I don't know what you want from me. I want you to understand consequences. For 8 years, you've been able to terrorize people who couldn't fight back. Today, you tried it on someone who can. David made another phone call. Hi, this is David Spencer. I need you to draft a cease and desist letter. Yes, harassment and defamation. Linda Hartwell. Send copies to her, her husband, and every business in the Westfield Shopping Center. And I want a private investigator to document her future interactions with service workers. Yes, I'm serious. Linda was hyperventilating now. What are you doing to me? I'm protecting every service worker in this city from having to deal with your abuse. If you so much as speak rudely to a cashier from now on, it's going to be documented and reported. And if the pattern continues, I'll make sure every business owner in the state knows exactly who you are and what you do. David stood up and started packing his laptop. But that's not all, Linda.
The thing about having unlimited resources, David said as he zipped up his backpack, is that you can afford to be thorough. Linda was still crying, but now she looked terrified. We've already sent care packages and gift cards to every employee you've gotten fired or caused to quit. They'll all be receiving $5,000 each, along with letters of recommendation from Fusion Core Technologies. We're also setting up a scholarship fund in their names. Linda stared at him in horror. How many people? 17 that we could identify. So far. We're still investigating. David pulled out his phone again. We've also purchased the Yelp accounts where you posted your harassment reviews. All 847 reviews have been taken down and replaced with apologies and donations to the affected businesses. You can't do that. I can, and I did. We also identified the fake accounts you created to leave additional bad reviews when businesses banned you. Those are gone too. Linda looked like she was about to faint. But here's my favorite part, David continued with genuine enthusiasm. We've created the Linda Hartwell Service Worker Protection Fund. Every business in this shopping center and eventually throughout the city will have a direct number to call if you harass their employees. The fund will cover any lost wages, provide legal support, and ensure that no worker ever has to choose between their job and their dignity when dealing with you. This is insane, Linda whispered. You can't ruin my life over one conversation. One conversation? David looked genuinely surprised. Linda, this isn't about one conversation. This is about 8 years of systematic abuse that I just happened to witness personally. David's phone rang. Hi. Yes, Dr. Hartwell.
No, your wife is fine. She's right here. What complaint? Oh, the one to the medical board about your pattern of taking personal stress out on patients? Yes, that was us. Well, it's all public record. No, sir, I don't think you understand the situation. David handed the phone to Linda. Your husband would like to speak with you. I couldn't hear Dr. Hartwell's side of the conversation, but Linda's face went through about 12 different emotions before she hung up and handed the phone back. He's not happy, she said weakly. I imagine not. Having a billionaire file detailed complaints about your medical practice is probably not great for business. Linda looked around the coffee shop desperately, like she was hoping to find an exit that would lead her back to this morning when she was still the terror of retail workers instead of the target of someone with unlimited resources and a sense of justice. What do you want me to do? She asked finally. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, and for the first time in your adult life, you're experiencing them. David shouldered his backpack and looked down at Linda with something that might have been sympathy. Here's what's going to happen, Linda. You're going to go home and think very carefully about the kind of person you've been and the kind of person you want to be. You're going to write personal apology letters to every person you've harmed, and we have a complete list. You're going to volunteer at a homeless shelter for 200 hours so you can learn that a person's worth isn't determined by their appearance or economic status. Linda nodded frantically. And if you ever treat another service worker the way you've been treating them, I'll make sure your story becomes a case study taught in business schools about the importance of treating all customers and employees with basic human dignity.
David started walking toward the door, then turned back.
And oh, Linda, I'm keeping this table. I've decided this is my new favorite coffee shop. After David left, Linda sat there crying for another 10 minutes before finally leaving. The baristas gave her the coldest looks I've ever seen humans give another human. Within a week, Linda had become a local legend, but not in a good way. The story spread through social media, and Linda Hartwell became shorthand for entitled customer behavior in our city. Dr. Hartwell made Linda get therapy and do community service to try to repair his professional reputation. Linda now volunteers at 3 different organizations and apparently hasn't complained about service anywhere in 6 months. The Linda Hartwell Service Worker Protection Fund has helped dozens of employees deal with abusive customers throughout the city. Alex is mortified, but also relieved that someone finally held his mom accountable for her behavior. He says she's actually becoming a decent person for the first time in his adult life. David Spencer kept his promise and now comes to that coffee shop regularly. The staff treats him like a folk hero, and there's apparently an unofficial David Spencer table that regular customers leave open for him. It does seem, though, that Linda is genuinely sorry for her past behavior and is working hard to become a better person. She's also asked local businesses to give her a chance to prove she's changed. I believe her. It's amazing what consequences can do for someone's character development.